Welcome to the Social Media Detox Podcast. I am so excited to be joined today by someone who I love and adore, Erin Dooley, who candidly is my sister-in-law, but is also a middle school principal and also a doctoral candidate in education. So she knows firsthand what it looks like to see social media and the effects of that on middle schoolers and teens and young growing adults. So I thought it would be a really interesting person to have on the podcast. Thank you so much for being here, Erin.
Thank you for having me.
First of all, can you just tell us a little bit about your role as a middle school principal and your perspective personally on how social media plays into the lives of your students?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is my 25th year in education, and through that time, I've had different roles. But when I started, I was a teacher, and social media was not in the spectrum at all or in the realm. And then when I became an administrator, which was about 10 years ago, I was a dean of students at a sixth through eighth grade building in a pretty low socioeconomic area. And that's when MySpace and
Oh,
those
yeah.
almost obsolete, I guess I would say now, platforms first started to come out. And what we noticed is a lot of the kids didn't have phones quite yet, but some did. And what we noticed there is Mondays were solely spent on reversing all the damage that was done over the weekend. So from, you know, girl fights to just online banter back and forth, we would have to do lots of mediations with kids. Fast forward, I was an elementary school principal after that. Didn't see as much of it in a K-5 setting. And then fast forward now, where I'm in a 5-6 building and then in conjunction really closely with the 7-8 building. Um, so my role really is student discipline, um, mentoring teachers, academic roles, you name it. And I can confidently say that within the last 5 years, especially since COVID, where kids were forced, on their laptops, we forced online learning, all of those things, it has become significantly more intense for them. Social emotional, just had a meeting. A girl was hospitalized yesterday, some online bullying was going on. And so it definitely has had a very negative effect on our students.
And it's so interesting because you have been an educator for so long. You've seen social media really blow up. What do you
Mhm.
see? How do you see that difference, from even 10 years ago to now? I mean, now it's like it doesn't leave their hand.
No,
What does
it
that
doesn't
look
leave their hand.
like? Yeah.
So our school district just this year recently initiated a district-wide no cell phones from the time you walk in the door until no cell phones or smartwatches from the time you walk in our door until the time you leave our building. The seventh, eighth grade building has something called Yonder pouches, and so the kids are every morning they go through lines, kind of like cafeteria style lines, where they lock their phones in these Yonder pouches, have to show it to a dean, the principal, whoever's on supervision duty. And then on their way out, it's like a metal locking thing. On the way out, they unlock their Yonder pouch as they're getting on the bus, going to sports, walking, riding their bikes home. My building, because they were going to try out the Yonder pouches there. My building it's just in your locker and it's off and it's out of sight, out of mind. So that has been a huge, huge, huge difference, and it really has. Of course, you have your kids that are on them, but there is consequences. As parents, we gave a parent meeting at the beginning of the year, and actually, a lot of parents. Really, really praised us and praised our efforts because we have phones in every classroom. So when parents try and make that argument of I want to know where my child is at all times, um, they can't make that argument. Phones in every classroom that dial out, office staff, my phone, I have a direct line. But we really did not, everything for the most part was very positive on the parent perspective. So that has been a huge thing. But this is all because of things that have gone down in the past. And still, it's still playing a huge role. Like when you think of when even, obviously you're quite a bit younger than me, but even when you were in school or I was in school, you were having an issue with a friend or a group of friends, you could go home and home was your safe place. it was safe. Well, now it's not safe because now they can get to you through the phone, through social media platforms. You have the FOMO going on where girls or boys will purposely take photos of them doing something and then send it to a person that they've left out. And we see that all the time. Also, the things, because they don't have to say it face to face, the things that they say in chat or Snapchat messaging, they're horrific. I mean, again, I have 10, 11, and 12-year-old students, and they tell each other to go kill themselves. One girl, she was hospitalized last year, and they started calling her Suicide Girl this year. And none of it rarely ever comes face to face. So, on top of all of the other things, desensitization has happened, and it's happened with adults. Look what happens during election times and times of crisis, and everybody's at each other's throats online. So I do believe that social media has really, really kind of made kids grow up faster, made them less sensitive. You even go to a store and talk to a teenager working the cash register, and their social skills are not what they used to be because they're always on their phones, and that's their main way of communicating.
It's so crazy too, because in a way it makes you feel like you are being more social, like you're more connected to a
Mhm,
community, like you can talk to people, you know what's going
mhm.
on more than you did before. But it is so funny because we've lost so many of those social skills because it feels like we're getting that connection through a digital device, but it's not real. It's not the
Right,
same. Yeah, I think
right.
that's really interesting. So I want to talk a little bit about those pouches that you mentioned and
Yeah.
implementing that new rule this year in some of the schools, putting those phones away. Do you see the kids have, a breath of release? Is that refreshing for them? What's the overall
Yeah.
reaction been?
Yeah, overall, of course, there's the mumbling and grumbling in the
Yeah.
beginning, but if you have that relationship with those students and the teachers will talk to them, it allows them to be kids,
Right.
where that's just not the case. And it removes that FOMO
Hmm.
aspect of, oh, I've got to check my phones between passing periods, or I'm going to keep it in my sweatshirt and see what everybody else is doing, even though most of them should be in school. But sometimes, it's just that what's going on. Let me check Instagram. Let me check Snapchat. Let me check TikTok. And so it has removed that layer of stress from them ultimately because all of their friends or all of their classmates, they're in the same, position that they're in. So
That's great because it gives them like an excuse to log off. It gives them
mhm,
like, I can't do it
absolutely.
because but it's probably a relief for them to be able to be off of that.
Yep.
Okay, so how do you see social media integrated daily in the lives of your students?
Mhm.
Do you see
Well,
that
we're a
pop up?
one-to-one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're a one-to-one school, so that means every student in our district has their own Chromebook.
Hmm.
K-4, it stays at school with them. 5-8, they get it in 5th grade, and they're responsible for it 5th through 8th. Through that, they have email, a lot of Google Classroom. We're a Google district, so Google is huge. All assignments are assigned through Google.
Hmm.
And when COVID first started, that was huge. That was new. That was really cool. But what we've tried to do, though, too, is even take it back to more of like balance, a nice balance. Moderation is key.
Hmm.
And so, you can't do a science experiment on the computer, or you can't get that small group work and that connection with teachers and other students discussing a novel, let's say. So
Hmm.
we've really tried to balance that out, where they're not always on their Chromebooks. And yeah, we've done some tech nights, some parent tech safety nights. We've had Will County State's Attorney in to talk to the kids, especially the junior high kids, sending pictures to, you know, respective other your boyfriend or your girlfriend at the time,
Right.
just all of that. We also do a digital citizenship that was passed, that was board policy. So every month, our tech director, sometimes we have a SRO, that's our school resource officer. They kind of do all of these things. And as they get older, the lessons get a little more intense. But when they're younger, it's just, screen time, healthy habits, those kinds of things. And then by the time they're in 5th grade, we really start having those talks about sexting, just the dangers of social media and befriending people online that you don't know.
Yeah. Wow. It is just so crazy. I can't even believe that there's just so much, there's a barrage of things now that we have to worry about,
Mm.
and especially you as an educator and, an administrator, that we didn't even have to think about when I was growing up. And so I just think it's
Right.
so interesting. I wanted to talk a little bit about what your perspective is on this. I was thinking about this on the ride in. Do you think that social media affects in children or young teens motivation at all? Because I was thinking about when I was younger, I was a
Mhm.
competitive dancer. I danced competitively, and I thought I was pretty good. But if I
Mhm.
just can imagine if I were a kid now having access to social media and being able to see, I don't know, for example, kids in California, those dancers are like far
Mhm.
wide, way better. I think it would like dampen my
Mhm.
motivation, because I think I would look at them, compare myself to them, and say, I don't even know why I'm trying. These kids are way better than me. Do you
Mhm.
see kids comparing themselves and that affecting the way that they move in the real world, or is that not really a thing?
I have not seen that, and
Okay.
having two girls that have gone through travel sports, if anything, that might be a positive for social media,
Oh,
because you can put on, and yes, by all means, there is positives to social media. But like, we watch pitching lessons or, top pitchers. That's a way, Twitter now is the way that college coaches, if you're trying to get recruited, you have to, as a young adult athlete, starting as early as 13, 14, you have to start sending college coaches reels. They don't want what
oh,
your
wow.
parents have. They don't want what the coaches have. Sure, it could have the negative effect, but I would say, kind of just from my own personal experience, that might be a positive of social media.
That's
And maybe
interesting.
a motivating factor. That's of course again with parental support.
Hmm.
These platforms try and put this age restriction. 13 for TikTok, Snapchat, I think is maybe 13 too. And as a parent of a 13-year-old and an 18-year-old, and I've had this talk with lots of parents, and the parents that haven't yet let their kids get phones in fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth grade. I commend them. I mean, we let our daughters get phones in fifth because that's when they started getting off the bus by themselves and letting themselves in the house. And so I needed a way to reach them at that point. But parents that are really headstrong about it, I mean, I really, really think that that is awesome. And even my own, I mean, we tried, you can do the parental controls, and we did that. Now, obviously, the 18-year-old, that's a different story. But, and now that my youngest is 13, we've released some of the parental controls. But a lot of times, kids are far smarter than we are and far savvier than we are with social media.
Hmm.
Because just that's what they've grown up on. That's what they've known. So talking to parents and getting that out there that you can put parental controls while letting them have it still, so they're still in the know, because that's another hard thing. Then that develops another form of FOMO if they're the only ones without a phone and all of their friends have phones. So it's hard.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Well, and while you're talking about parents too and parental controls, I wonder, do you see that parents sometimes use phones as a way of like self-soothing their kids? I mean, I know you look at like
Mm.
young toddlers and like throwing an iPad in
Yeah.
their face, like, please stop crying. But do you see that happen sometimes with older kids, teens, and just say, just look at your phone because I can't deal with.
Mhm.
I mean, do you think
I don't
that's, yeah,
Sadly, I don't think they have to do that because they're already doing that. I do see
right.
it in younger, definitely in restaurants, and
Yeah.
even I supervise sports in our school district, and the younger kids, it's like, okay, just sit here, be quiet. Here's the iPad.
Yeah.
Versus like, when we were younger, we had to watch and
Yeah.
participate, be involved in our brothers or sisters' sports or cousins or whatever. So, but I think again, sadly, I think they don't have to because the students are already so used to being on their phones all the time.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, that's very interesting. Do you notice any patterns in students' behavior, or emotional well-being that's like linked to the social
Mhm.
media use?
I
Like
think, I mean, yeah, go ahead.
yeah.
Sorry.
No, so I know we've kind of talked about cyberbullying, FOMO, body image concerns, but yeah.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I definitely think that it plays a part. And I know that there's studies out there that will show the mental health crisis that our youth is in, attributing a lot of it to social media. Yeah, and even just our own counseling, like my own, obviously I have a social worker, and she deals a lot with mediations and conflicts between students that have happened, not at school, but at home, over on their phones and through our emails. Like we have
Oh,
a
wow.
yeah, we have a couple safeguards. Again, we're a very big, we're a small district, so that was why we can implement all these things. But we have a couple. It's called Go Guardian, and basically it alerts us anytime a child, and it's only our devices. Obviously, we can't do it on their personal devices, but because the one-on-one computers are ours, even though they're paying for them and they're theirs. We have what we call Go Guardian and Gaggle alerts. And so that comes up anytime a student is searching something inappropriate,
Mm.
like suicide. I've had to have a lot of those conversations, or
Oh, gosh.
in like it'll pick up emails they're sending to one another. Like it just had one yesterday, and it flagged, "Are you threatening me?" And then of course we then have to follow up with that. So
Wow. Well, it's good that it's good that technology is starting to, catch up with all
Mhm,
these things that are happening. But gosh, I can't even, that's so much to monitor.
for
Um,
sure.
there's obviously a lot of discussion about how social media can contribute to anxiety and depression in
Mhm.
young people. In your experience, do you think that there is a direct link between social media use and mental health use in middle schoolers, or is it just the day and age, or is it a
I
combination of
think
all
it's
of it?
everything. I mean, I
Yeah.
definitely think social media plays a part in it, again, because they can't get away from issues. Before you could like I said, home was your safe place, and to get away from a bad day at school or a conflict with a friend, and now it's right there in their faces all the time. So it
Mhm.
definitely contributes to depression and social emotional well-being.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so what role do you think that schools should play? Because I know this is something you probably deal with every day. You're talking
But
to, your staff and other
right.
administrators. What do you
Yeah.
think that schools should be doing? I know you guys are doing a lot already, but do you think there
Mhm.
is a responsibility for schools to educate students about healthy digital habits, provide resources? I know you kind of touched on that earlier.
Yeah. Oh, I 100% think that that is part of the curriculum. I mean, we
Hmm.
talk about reading and writing and math, but in order for us to stay up to date with our students and to make them lifelong learners, 21st century learners, schools have a huge obligation, especially if we're putting devices in their hand, which we do. And I know all of the surrounding school districts have done the same thing. So, yeah, I do feel that we, as a school district, as schools across the country, have a huge role in educating the students because that is part of the curriculum now.
Right. And it's amazing that you guys are doing so much and stepping up in that way. And then I think about, what happens when these kids go home? What
Yep.
happens if you go home to a parent that's also glued to their phone? What do you
Yeah.
think
Right.
what do you tell parents, or what do you try to instill in parents, about
Right.
their own social media use and maybe how
Right.
that could affect, their own students and when they go home? Because that's kind of
Yeah,
hard
and
too.
that's a slippery slope,
Yeah.
for sure,
Yeah, you
and
can't tell
so,
parents what to do.
I can't tell parents to model for your children, but that comes from building relationships with the parents, and
Yeah.
coming from a point of concern for their child, and
Mhm.
then hoping that maybe a light bulb will go off, like, "Oh, well, so and so is on the phone all the time, but yet I'm on the phone all the time as well." So, it's
Mhm.
really that relationship building piece with the parents and them seeing you as an ally and an advocate for their child and just trying to get them to do the same.
Is that something you think you've seen, or do kids ever talk about, "My mom's on her phone all the time. Why can't I be on my phone?" Or "My mom, is scrolling through TikTok. Why can't I be scrolling through TikTok?" Is that ever a thing, or
You know what? I haven't like encountered that. Like if we've had to discipline a child for social media use or
Mhm.
something like that, they usually don't rat their parents out. But is it happening? 100%. Does it happen sometimes at my own home? 100%. After a long day, I'll be like, I just want to lay in my bed and just go down the real world for an
5
hour or so
minutes,
before
yeah.
time.
Right.
But now we have started to try with my youngest. Again, my oldest away at college, and I don't really have a say there, but, half hour before she goes to bed and a half hour after she wakes up, and it has, especially in the morning, getting her up is and, again, her alarm goes off. Where's her alarm? On her phone. And then so she picks that up and instantly there's a million notifications. I mean, it's still we'll be laying in bed watching a show and she'll have her phone next to her and it is beeping. I mean, it is going off every single second. And I'm like, "What in the world is happening?" And it's the Snapchats they send back and forth, and
Those
so
Snapchats.
now, like, if we watch a show, phone, disconnect from your phone for an hour or so.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, it's so hard. Yeah, these kids are the
Yep.
Snapchat is a whole thing. They're like snapping
Yep.
every breath they take. I'm
Everything.
like,
Everything. I mean, the
it's
wall. I'm like,
wild.
who are you sending that to? And what does that have any significance on anything that's important?
It is
So,
crazy. Yeah, no, I totally get it though. We had AIM as a kid. I had AIM as a kid. Did you have it? Did you have anything like that? Were you MySpace or?
no, MySpace was when I was older in my 20s. Like, I mean, I was still, again, a little older than you. I think college is when we still did where you had to plug in and you got the ringing for the computer to boot up. So,
Oh yeah, the dial-up
yeah,
tone. That's
yep,
amazing.
yep, yep.
Um, that's awesome. Okay, so do you think that just because we are talking about social media detox on this podcast, do you think
Mhm.
that something like a social media detox would be helpful for students to build
Mhm.
in-person relationships and focus more on their academics, extracurriculars? Do you
Mhm.
think that that could provide some sort of solace, or do you think
Yeah.
that'd be too hard for these students?
I mean, I think it would be very hard. I
Yeah,
think social media is an addiction, and any sort of addiction requires lots and lots of patience and multiple different strategies and outlets. I think a social media detox would be great for everyone, and I really am hopeful. My first major was my bachelor's degree is in history, and so when we studied history, history is always cyclical. So the pendulum will swing one way, and then it swings another way, and it repeats itself. So at some point I'm really hoping that we can get back to that place where social media is not at the forefront of our lives.
absolutely. Oh my God, Erin, you are so good. This is so interesting. Okay, before I let you go, is there anything else you want to talk about? Anything else you want to bring to the forefront of this discussion about social media and its effects on our youth?
So I definitely see a movement happening. I mean, I do see it. I mean, the anxious generation came out wildly successful and
Mm-hmm.
such good information from the psychological standpoint. The mental health crisis that can't be ignored anymore. And so I do think that we just have to kind of keep fighting the good fight. And again, I don't think all social media is bad. I mean, I use Facebook to just see friends that I haven't seen in 20 years and again, I think if you do it moderation is key. And in this day in society, we don't do anything moderately, unfortunately. And I don't know what you can attribute that to. There's probably lots of different factors. But I do think if we kind of just keep getting the message out there and more schools are definitely trying to implement what we've implemented. It's not as easy. High school is very hard. You have 18-year-olds. How are you going to tell an 18-year-old that they have to check their phone in at the beginning of the day? And but I know that they're going to try. They're going to start to try. And so when they can see their like, hopefully, we'll see a difference in test scores, and we're doing all these different things. Hopefully we can start to show the success of them not on their phones and during the school day, then that can be a trickle down effect. But so I do have hope. I do see the movement happening. And again, there is some very positive things with social media. But I do think our youth is not adequately equipped to handle everything that they also see on social media, which could be attributing to some of the social emotional and all of the other things.
Absolutely. Well, we thank you for all of the work that you are doing day in and day out to stay on top of this. And thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you, Erin, for being on the
Absolutely.
podcast. This was so wonderful, so enlightening, and you're the
It was
best.
fun.
Yeah, this was
Yeah, it
fun.
was fun.
Let's
I'm
do
gonna have
this
to make my way to
again.
California and,
Yeah.
be a live guest.
Yes, absolutely. That would be so great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Erin, and we'll talk
Thank
to you guys soon.
you. Sounds great.